The truth hurts. Ferrari ended up behind Williams too, and no, it's not an exaggeration. In Miami, the SF25 hit the lowest point of the season. And the question now is brutal. Is there still hope, or is this season already a write-off? McLaren is soaring, Mercedes is observing quietly, and Red Bull is stumbling at the top. But be cautious as things are shifting behind the scenes. New technical directives, internal tensions, key developments on the way, and a name that could change the balance of an entire team. But to really understand where this Formula One is going, you need to look at every detail until the end. Before we start, please leave a supportive like, and now let's get started. The reality is brutal. Thinking of bridging such a gap while direct competitors evolve in their turn is almost utopian. McLaren continues to improve with surgical precision, Mercedes waits to fully exploit its technical window, and even Williams in Florida finished ahead of the SF25. This hurts, but the budget has been spent, changes are planned, and it will be the track to determine if the season still makes sense. Expectations towards the TD18 directive, which on paper could hit McLaren and Mercedes, are perhaps more illusory than founded. If we look at Ferrari's historical reactions to regulatory changes, a clear trend emerges. Every change seems to penalize the red more than others, and the behavior of the SF25 suggests that the new directive could paradoxically further complicate the picture. The main problem remains the operational window of the car. In Miami, the aeromechanical compromise was not found. The car never really got into setup. The single free practice session did not allow to explore alternative solutions, and the work done at the simulator turned out to be too far from reality. The result? A setup overturned at the last moment, chasing the feedback from the drivers without ever achieving the right balance between ground clearance and suspension stiffness. Usually, Ferrari arrives on the track with a solid base to work on. This time nothing worked, neither in the slow corners nor in the fast ones. The balance was completely off, and every change only increased the confusion. The comparison with Mercedes is ruthless. In Brackley, they briefly get into the car's sweet spot, but in Maranello, they don't even manage that. And McLaren, with impressive consistency, manages to make the most of every lap. It's not a matter of a single race, but if the indications that emerge are reliable, then urgent action is needed. The updates promised by Vasseur for Imola and Barcelona are crucial. The team expected to compete with Mercedes and found themselves behind Haas and Williams. The performance of the SF25 is definitely better than what we saw in Miami, but the margin for error has been eliminated and the other teams are not waiting. More aerodynamic load is needed, a wider map is needed to balance the car, and a definitive answer is needed on the issues of ground clearance and tire activation. Only in this way will Ferrari be able to understand if it is worth continuing to fight for something this year, or if it is already time to think about the next season. Before giving up, they want to give their all in Maranello. Frederick Vasseur has analyzed the disaster with Tony Franchi. He spoke of a race in which Ferrari completed all 57 laps but never really had the chance to fight. He openly acknowledged the superiority of McLaren, describing it as on another planet. The bitterness was focused on the difficulty in qualifying, where the ideal balance was never found and the best lap came with used tires, something that hasn't happened for at least 2 seasons. Frustrating, but also indicative of the fact that there are fundamental problems still unresolved, to be addressed one by one with method and clarity. Vasseur has hit the nail on the head. More than a problem of frame or aerodynamics, the key to performance lies in tire management. On other weekends, Ferrari extracted more potential from the tires. However, in Miami, everything became complicated. No consistency, no possibility of making the car work in the window.
Optimal. The
result? A car that in the race lost the comparison not only with Red Bull and Mercedes, but also with teams that on paper should be much further behind. The driver's management has also been scrutinized. The team was the only one to make a track swap, a position change between Hamilton and Leclerc to try to catch up with Antonelli. The decision, debated but consistent with the team's internal regulations, was defended by Vasseur. The attempt did not bear fruit, and after a few laps, they returned to the initial situation. It's never easy to impose a swap on the drivers, but both respected the directives. It's certainly a detail, but it also tells how much technical difficulties condition everything, including strategy. And now there's a break before returning to Europe. Formula One arrives at Imola, home circuit for Ferrari, but the scenario is anything but serene. World title dreams are already compromised and the car remains behind. The hope is tied to developments, small updates expected already over the Saturno weekend, followed by a more substantial step planned for Barcelona. But Vasseur himself has clearly stated, it's not enough to just look at the updates. First and foremost, we need to find the best technical compromise. We need to combine every element, aerodynamics, balance, setup, tires, to start getting back in the game. McLaren is dominating early on, challenging top teams. Ironically, Mercedes is faring the best against them. 2025 was supposed to be a transition year, but it's exceeding expectations. There's disappointment at Ferrari, but things aren't going well at Red Bull either. The team continues to rely solely on Verstappen's miracles and is in a phase full of doubts about the future. Doubts that not only concern the performance on the track, but the entire sporting commitment of Red Bull in motorsport. At Imola, the first European Grand Prix of 2025, important updates on the RB21 will arrive. But if things do not change, even Christian Horner is at risk. According to Autosprint, the historic team principal would be losing part of the support from the Thai component of the company, which holds the majority of the red brand.
Horner
Has led the team since 2005, but today that position seems less secure. Already in 2024, in the midst of a scandal for alleged inappropriate behavior, the Thai bloc had helped to save him. Now, however, the games are reopening, also because Red Bull would be considering a general rationalization of expenses in sports. If Horner really were to leave, paradoxically Helmut Marko could remain in his place, closer to the Austrian bloc of the company. As always, however, the track will decide everything. If Red Bull will fly again, these rumors could deflate, but also pay attention to 2026, when the new power units entirely made by Milton Keynes will debut. The passage will be delicate again, as there were reports of internal management tensions back in March.
And in
The name Oliver Oakes, current Alpine team principal, is being mentioned frequently as a potential replacement for Horner. Story very similar to that of Horner, former driver, became a young manager, entered the world of Formula One early. He was already linked to Red Bull in early 2024 amid the controversy surrounding Horner. Nothing materialized then, but with new scenarios emerging, everything can change. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris have put on a stunning performance over the weekend in Miami, leaving everyone speechless. The city circuit in Florida has highlighted the qualities of McLaren, but no one expected such a clear dominance over the other teams. Looking back, Verstappen's performance also deserves a new evaluation. Taking home half of the pole positions after 6 races and managing to keep up with the McLaren pair is still a merit for the Dutchman. After the race, George Russell appeared quite shaken by the technical gap that separated the Mercedes from the orange car. His words were clear: there is no update that can bridge such a distance unless the federation intervenes. The data speaks for itself. Despite Verstappen being in the lead in the early laps and there being 2 virtual safety cars, Russell crossed the finish line about 40 seconds late. After just 6 races, the hopes of the other teams, and to some extent the entire championship, are clinging to the effect that the new regulation limiting the flexibility of the front wings can have. Many are wondering if the progress made by McLaren in 2024 can be repeated. The topic has been repeated everywhere since the winter tests, but there are at least 2 reasons to doubt it. Firstly, last year Red Bull went through an internal crisis after the investigation into Horner. Adrian Newey had abandoned the F1 project in the spring, and in the meantime Ferrari had shown signs of competitiveness with Sainz's victory in Australia and a series of podiums. Secondly, the regulatory situation of 2025 is very different. The stables must be careful how they manage the spending cap and the aero tests, as new rules will come into effect next year. The teams, based on their goals, will have to decide how long to invest in the development of the car. To give an idea of the costs, an upgrade plan can be worth around $15 million, which is more than 10% of the available budget. Who is really willing to invest these amounts now, risking compromising the next season? Thinking back to certain statements by Andrea Stella, it almost makes you smile. After yet another poll from Verstappen, he spoke of an exaggerated narrative around Red Bull, claiming they were far ahead of McLaren. Piastri and Norris have sharply contradicted this, bringing to mind the 2023 Red Bull or the Golden Age Mercedes. During qualifying, Norris tried to take the pole, but it was Verstappen who came out on top. However, in the race, McLaren simply did another job inflicting significant gaps even on the Dutchman, who could only defend himself as best he could. The technical progress of the English team is impressive, especially when you consider that last year in Miami they were lapped by Red Bull. McLaren has made a technical leap that has disoriented everyone. It was already considered among the favorites for the World Championship, but the performance in Florida has completely broken that technical balance between the teams that seem to have formed in 2024. And with stable rules, such a clear leap makes even more noise. The other teams can now only hope that the new regulation on the rigidity of the front wing, the so-called TD018, can mix things up a bit. It could just be an illusion, and the feeling is that the season has already taken a specific direction. If you like the video, hit like, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos.